So we're on section 71 first. Jesus in Galilee because the Jews sought to kill him. You'll notice a little map in the books there to give you a little insight into where all these different sections of Israel were. You can see up onto the north end of the map the country of Syria, and Syria had held that position for just ages and ages. And then to the left you can see, if you have your glasses on, Sidon and Tyre and Sidon there. Those were along the coast. And Syria was the controlling power in that region ever since Alexander the Great. And that coastline is Phoenicia, the Phoenicians. How many people remember ever hearing about the Phoenicians? Okay, pretty good. Younger people, I could see where you might not, okay, but others of us, we had a little bit more ancient history perhaps. And Phoenicia, the Phoenicians were great sea traders that were before Israel was in existence. They had dominated that area, and the Philistines were somewhat related to them as well. And so you can see Syria up in the north. Then you have the Sea of Galilee. That is there, that big dark spot in the middle of the top there, and that is the Galilee region. To the right of that is Decapolis. Decapolis, you want to remember, was an area that was set up that represented Greek city plants. That's why it's Decapolis. It means 10 cities. Below that is Perea, and then to the left of that is Judea. Judea and Galilee were the two regions of Israel. Now, you want to remember that that is the geopolitical division in the time of Christ. Before that, Galilee and Judea were just one country. It was just Israel. In fact, part of that is also Samaria in the northern part of Judea. So you have this area of Decapolis as well, and then you have Sidon and Tyre, the Phoenician cities. So the one thing you want to notice about this was that the Syro-Phoenicians were Gentiles, and that is one of the key aspects of some of the study tonight. Okay, so we have question 459. There's only one question to this section here, and the question is, why did Jesus concentrate his time in Galilee at this point in his ministry? It's based on John 7:1. It says, after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry because the Jews sought to kill him. And so the answer is going to be? B. Okay, B. Those in Judea in the south and their priests sought to kill him before his time. And that is a key consideration to understanding this. Jesus was up touring really pretty much in the Galilee region all this time. Most of his ministry was taking place up there because he didn't want to be there for the Jews who would kill him. Now this is something that should raise a little bit of a question, and if you're not totally familiar with the ethnic makeup of things at that time, it could slip right past you. The question that somebody who's not familiar would be that, weren't the people up in Galilee, weren't they Jews also? Well, I thought that all the people of Galilee and all the people down in the south, they were all Jews. Weren't Peter and Andrew and everybody else, all the fishermen up there, weren't they Jews, even though they lived in Galilee? And the answer is yes, they also were considered Jews. Now, we say that as far as ethnicity is concerned. Culturally, it was different. The name Jew itself was not something that was applied to Abraham, the one who was the father of the Jewish nation. The name Jew was not applied to Isaac, Abraham's son. Then Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob was not called a Jew. Okay, so where does the name Jew come from? Well, it comes from the tribe of Judah. Jacob had 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name was changed to Israel by God. And then he had the 12 sons. Of those 12 sons, one was Judah. And by the way, they were still not called the Jews. You get to hundreds of years later when King David comes around, and with the beginning of the kingdom of Israel there, and you have the United Kingdom, David was descended from Judah because the promise had been given that the scepter would not pass from between him before Shiloh would come, so that you had the idea of a scepter or a rule that was given to the tribe of Judah. And so you had all the kingly descendants coming from Judah through David. Now, still not called, by the way, they were still not called the Jews yet. Okay, this is something that would come a little bit later. You had a split in the kingdom. David's son, King David's son Solomon, he had his issues, and so the kingdom was going to get split, so that you had the kingdom in the north and you had the kingdom in the south. They were all the children of Israel, but you had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is called the kingdom of Israel. The southern kingdom was called the kingdom of Judah. And because of the line of the Judean kings, they came to be known as the Jews. So the Jews in the south, in the Jerusalem area, where the tribe of Judah existed, carried the name of Jews, and they were called Jews. So that's where the name comes from. So if you were from the southern end there, if you were part of that subculture that surrounded Jerusalem, the priestly city, the temple city, the capital of Israel, if you were in that area, you were known as the Jews. The Galileans, on the other hand, were sort of that section of Israel where the people had become mixed with a number of different countries after the Assyrian and the Babylonian captivities. And so you had kind of a mixture there. They were not known for their godliness up in the north. Down in the south, they were known more for their religion. I was going to say spirituality, but I shouldn't say that because they had problems with their spirituality. They were more of the religious Jews. They were more of the cultural Jews. They could speak Hebrew down there, and it was not necessarily so in the north. And so if you look in this quote that's in the book, it comes from thegospelcoalition.org, and it has a good explanation of how the Judeans were culturally different than the north. They were considered more refined. They were considered more spiritual, but they followed the laws more carefully, and that's where you had a lot of the Pharisees from. So when it says that he was trying to avoid those who were trying to kill him, those who were part of Jewry, it was talking specifically of those in the south. Now, again, were they Jews in the north? Yes, they just weren't called necessarily the Jews. Jewry was a term referring to the Jews of Judea in the south there. And that's kind of an important thing to know, a good distinction to know anyhow, because later on when you get to, like in the book of Acts, you have the Sanhedrin. They took note that they were just Galileans. They were just ignorant fishermen. They were unlearned. And what they meant was they weren't from the cultural south where they had a strong religious practice and strong religious identity. And so when they talk about Peter and others being unlearned, they were not trying to say they were stupid. They were not trying to say that they were dull. What they were saying was they weren't graduated from the colleges in the south, essentially. And so that's why you need to, that's why it's helpful to know those distinctions there, Brother Joe.
Unlearned but not untrained.
Unlearned but not untrained. Thank you. Okay, but now let's look also at A and C. Now these are two motivations that Jesus did not have, and we include these here for a reason. Now remember that Jesus had a sense of mission, and his mission was to not get killed yet. He was on a mission to die on the cross, but it was not timely for him. So looking at A and C, A says he was afraid of dying. No, Jesus was not afraid of dying. He knew he was going to be dying. And C, he enjoyed being a celebrity in Galilee. He had been preaching in Galilee and had a lot of following up there and people coming to him. But it's not because he was enjoying celebrity up there that he was avoiding the South. A and C are especially included here because they actually represent the basic motivation for natural man for survival. These are two elements of the natural man looking for survival. The natural man avoids those things that threaten his sense of survival, and he seeks out those things that ensure his survival. Both represent our basic sense of insufficiency. If you're trying to avoid death, you're trying to get away from those things that can cut you off because you sense that you're insufficient to stand on your own, that death is going to come. And then, but then the idea of enjoying celebrity, okay, that also is a reference to our sense of insufficiency. While we can avoid those things that threaten us, the only way to make sure of our survival is to depend on help that is beyond us. So the sense of Christ looking for a fan base and having celebrity status, the reason any celebrity has status at all is because they're looking for people's support, their fan support to keep the money flowing so they keep selling the tickets, right? Okay, so they depend on that. So enjoying celebrity status is really a statement about our sense of insufficiency and wanting to depend on others for survival. So the sense of celebrity is related to the idea that we need others to not only survive, but also to thrive. Jesus did not have that as a concern. To him, it was irrelevant. He knew he was going to die. He didn't need people to survive. He didn't need people to prop them up. It was irrelevant to Jesus Christ. He was not concerned about survival. He knew he was going to die. It's just that his time was not yet come. By avoiding Jewry, he was making sure of the time of his death to fulfill his mission. Our concern also should be more of a sense of mission rather than some mere fulfillment of an animal instinct of survival. Okay, why do I want to keep following Christ? Is it so that I can have a happy life here? No. The reason is because God is good, because God is great, because God deserves to be glorified. Instead of being on a mission of trying to keep my good health and trying to keep strong, the mission is to teach the strength of God instead. Now, should we be good stewards? Should we recognize our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit and that we are children of God and we should practice good health? Sure. But you know, especially in these days of the lockdown days and people with their fear of COVID and things like that, there's a problem here. There's a problem here. We shouldn't be foolish, but we shouldn't be letting that stop us from going on a sense of mission. How many people ever remember, I don't know why I knew this because Nancy grew up with this, ever hearing of Damien the leper? It's actually possible that more people could be familiar with Damien the leper. Okay, no. Damien was a Catholic priest who went to minister in the leper colonies in Hawaii. And Damien went in there and he knew that he was exposing himself to leprosy, but it had to be done. Somebody had to minister to them. Now, I do not say this to support Roman Catholicism. It's just that he's actually a notable figure in history. When Nancy told me about him, I looked up Damien the leper not too long ago, a few months ago. I thought, oh, this guy has a kind of a fame to him for having done that. How many of us would say, well, I can't go out and minister because I might get COVID? Do you realize how many hospital visits would not get made because we were so afraid to go out there and minister to those who were the unclean with disease? How many times would we go to somebody on their deathbed? Oh, I can't go because I might catch what you got. Okay. Or I can't help this kid out because I might catch what they've got. No, there's a risk that goes along with ministering. That's where the sense of mission comes in. Yes, there's a line between foolishness and faith. There's a time when you say, well, I think when I go in and I see this person, I'm not going to give them a big kiss, okay? They got smallpox. Thank you, I'm not going to give you a kiss. I am going to wear my protective gear, my personal protective equipment. I'm going to wear that. I'll be careful. But we have to remember that mission trumps survival. Mission trumps survival. Weigh the risks, but keep in mind that death is going to come to us sooner or later. We can't avoid it completely. Okay, God did not save us so that we can go out and be hermits. He saved us so that we can join together and get the job done. Okay, so the important thing here is to recognize between these questions, some have the idea of, well, I'm trying to be healthy, I'm trying to have some kind of sense of well-being, and I'm trying to survive. Okay, put that aside. The reason you follow God is because of the sense of mission. Now, in the course of doing that, you'll get spiritual strength. In the course of doing that, you will have a sense of well-being. In the course of doing that, you will enjoy the soundness of mind. In the course of doing that, you'll have your faith strengthened. And so you will end up having good stuff happen, but don't put the cart before the horse. Mission first, and then let us get the strength that we need. Any comments before we go on from there? Brother Tone, yes. Microphone for Brother Tone.
The irony is that the true Jewry should be considered a product of Jesus because he's a Jew.
Yeah.
Although he went on exile in Nazareth to escape Herod in Jewry country, south. But then people thought he was from a Galilean. And the way I see a similarity between the Washington D.C. folks who seem to be self-righteous. They decide on everything. And the flyover country, which is what they would consider the Galileans, but these are the Bible Belt states.
Yeah. Okay. That's inviting me to get into a whole explanation, but I'm going to spare that. But that is exactly the exact same concept. The exact same concept. The aristocracy of the central government area versus the people in flyover country. But it is all centered around the sense of aristocracy.
That's why the approach of Jesus was to bring back the true Judaism, the Jewish faith, back to its roots, the Bible, the
Yes.
scriptures. And he was giving them the right exegesis of the words written in the scriptures. There is scripture then, so that these Pharisees and scribes will at least listen, but they were not meant to listen.
Yeah, and the voluntary, the approach to the voluntary response of the people versus the man-made, what had evolved into the man-made sense of authority and source that was held in Jerusalem. Yeah, just distinctly direct comparison, directly related philosophically. Okay, so we thought we were only going to have one question. That'll be short and easy, won't it? Let me Okay, let's move on to section 72, and I believe we're only going to do section 72. And we'll stop with that this evening. Okay, I was going to try to go on to, because there's not too many questions in the others either. Okay. 72, the Syro-Phoenician woman now. Okay, so Christ has moved on to this area. Question number 460. Where did Jesus go to further avoid the Jews? Matthew 15:21. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coasts of Tyre and Sidon. And so, where did Jesus go to further to avoid the Jews? A. Tyre and Sidon in Syrian Phoenicia. And that's what I explained before when we were looking at the map there. The Syrian-controlled area of ancient Phoenicia. Okay, so it is that, but B and C are not just silly answers. Okay? Where did you go? To India? To the Americas? Why are they not silly? Well, does anybody want to venture something on that? Why I would throw those two as possibilities? As for wrong answers? What would be significant? Anybody know any significance? Why India? No, it is not Thomas going to India. That's a good guess, though, because Thomas did go to India with the gospel. Why is it not said that Jesus went to India to avoid the Jews? Okay, that's because there were some notions that, and so in fact, there are some fanciful notions, some fanciful claims that Jesus spent time in India and other Far East locations during the silent years of his age from 13 to 29. And it's based on a bunch of things that were just stated. In fact, if you look up, let me see, there's a Wikipedia article that talks about that. I'd have to find that again, but how this one guy wrote this book and claimed that Jesus went to study from the Buddhists and the Tibetans and things like that. So that's actually a thing that's out there. Now, once you know that, and it was entirely debunked and discredited, that doesn't matter, because in the age of the internet, somebody might have seen that somewhere and they're all authoritative. Well, Jesus went over to India, and that's where he got all his teachings from. He got it from the Buddhists over there. Okay, and of course, it's just a bunch of silly nonsense, people not knowing what they're talking about. But why the Americas? Why is that not a silly answer?
Sorry, one quick comment about India. Has the god Krishna anything to do with their claim that Jesus was in India? Because Krishna seems to be the transliteration of the word.
Yeah, no,
Christ.
it's not. But that would be a good guess. No, Christian
Yeah.
was a god before that. It's something entirely different.
Now, the one answer for the South America would be, the Americas would be, there's the Armstrong theory of the lost tribes, and that they settled in Britain and in the Americas. Would that be a good guess?
Actually, that is true, and I had not thought of that one. I was thinking of the Mormons. Okay, what Tone is referring to is a doctrine called Anglo-Israelism, and that the throne of, from Herbert W. Armstrong, and it was not just Armstrong, but others also had this Anglo-Israelism thing that suggested that the throne of David was taken up and to England, and so became part of the throne of England. And that America and America and Great Britain represent the continuation of the kingdom of David. And they even go so far as to say, well, you've got, obviously this is true, because on the British flag you have that cross there, and that represents the crossing of the crossing of Israel's arms when he went to bless Manasseh and Ephraim. And so, see, doesn't that just prove it? Okay, so no, I had not thought of that one. That's true. I was thinking of the one where the Mormons think that Jesus, after his resurrection, went to America to be able to share the gospel over there. And so the whole notion of Christ going somewhere else to avoid the Jews just seemed like a good opportunity to bring this up and mention that there's a lot of notions of Jesus going different places. These are just actually probably just two of them, I suppose. Okay. Okay, so Jesus was to Tyre and Sidon just as part of his avoiding the Jews there. Okay, question 461 says, what was Jesus' primary mission in his first coming? His primary mission. And it's based on Matthew 15:24. It says, but he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And Mark 7:27. But Jesus said unto her, let the children first be filled, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it unto the dogs. And so the answer is going to be B, yes. The answer is going to be B. Okay, to present himself to Israel. So what we should do is really also make sure to look at the context. Jesus is in this area, and a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast, and she wanted to have her son, who was vexed with the devil, to be healed. She recognizes him as the son of David. That is literally her recognizing that Jesus is the Messiah, son of David. They knew that there was going to be a descendant of King David who would come, who was going to restore the throne. So she, even though she is from Syria, Phoenicia, even though she's Phoenician, she was recognizing Christ as the Messiah. Now, remember, she's a Gentile. Okay, she's not a Jew, but she recognizes this. And so he says, I am not sent unto the lost sheep I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So he's referring to how this is where he was sent to. He was not sent to the Gentiles. He was sent to the Jews. Let me see. If you look at these other wrong answers, was he sent to judge the Gentiles? No. Jesus' mission on earth was never to judge the Gentiles. It was only to present himself as the King of Israel in his mission when he came to earth. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the Gentiles will not be judged in the future, though. They will be judged. In Matthew 25, verses 31 to 34, it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations. The word all nations specifically means Gentiles. The word is ethne, where we get the word ethnic from, and it's either translated as nations or as Gentiles. So whenever you see nations, it's referring to the Gentiles. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And so he's going to look at the Gentiles, and he's going to have a division between the sheep and the goats, the lost and the saved. Okay, Jesus' mission was to fulfill all those things that were given to the Jews to be able to present him as the king, to whom all the rest of the world was going to come. So, and this is a very important understanding that we have to make sure people get. If you want to understand the Bible, understand that God set up the nation of Israel in order to have a people who would record the prophecies, maintain the record of the prophecies in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible, that they would be a people that would be preserved by God miraculously, so that from Israel would come the Messiah, the Christ. And so the whole purpose of Christ coming at first was to present himself as the fulfillment of all those things the Jews had been given. He didn't come immediately to save the world. He came to present himself as king. He would end up being rejected as king. He would end up being rejected as king, but at that time, it was only to present himself for the kingdom of God. Okay, and if you look at A says, let me see, A says to bring the Gentiles into the kingdom? No, again, it was not to bring the Gentiles into the kingdom at the time, only to present himself. But this comes up for significance in question number 462. So what does the healing of the Syrophoenician woman portend? To portend means to foreshadow. Thank you. To foreshadow, to predict, to lead us into thinking about, or to looking forward to. Okay. Okay, so what does the healing of the Syrophoenician woman portend? Okay, well, in verse number 27, it says, and she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. So Christ brought this healing on this woman. So the answer is C. Okay, it's looking forward to the gospel outreach to the Gentiles. Okay, so even though Jesus was not coming for the Gentiles, nevertheless, the fact that he did a healing at all is like a down payment. It's like a mini display letting people know that, yeah, I got the Gentiles in my mind. You know, but it's just that his major emphasis was on Jesus. I'm sorry, yeah?
It's a sign or a warning that something will happen in the future.
Okay, a sign or a warning that something would happen in the future. In this case, a sign that something would happen in the future. Miss Nancy. Okay, that's Matthew 15. And I have down here, you should really include verses 25 to 28. Matthew 15 to 25 to 28. Now, it's not so obvious from the actual scripture itself, but that's why we have the questions and the answers formed the way they are, so you can get the best guess and to see this is really what it's getting to. If you look at A, the rejection of Israel, the fact that he goes to bless this woman, does that mean anything about Christ rejecting Israel? Now, there's nothing in Jesus' response to the woman to indicate any disavowal of Israel. It's just the benefit that extends from Israel to others. Now, this is consistent with the teaching that the Jews were to bless the world. The Jews knew that they were supposed to be a blessing to the world. Isaiah 49, verses 5 to 6 says, and now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God shall be my strength. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles. The Jews had been given as a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. So way back in Isaiah, in the Old Testament, Isaiah 49, verses 5 to 6, we see that the Jews knew they were supposed to be a light to the Gentiles. Israel was never to be rejected. It was merely put on hiatus until they were going to be restored later. I'm not going to read it now because we're running out of time, but Acts 13, verses 46 to 47. Okay, you can look that up where Paul quotes the Isaiah passage and points out that the Jews were being set aside. Not rejected, just put aside.
Pastor.
Yes.
Yeah, Jesus did not veer away from the focus of his mission. We call in the military, there's a difference between mission creep, which is going off course, or extending the mission, and mission target of opportunity. This one is a target of opportunity.
Mission target of opportunity. The first one was mission what?
Mission creep.
Oh, mission creep, where you
Yes.
you sort of
You
end up getting side.
You start here, but then you seem to decide on your own to enlarge the mission and then go to another area of operation.
Yeah.
But here it's a target of opportunity because he is, after all, giving a sign already that after this would be the Gentiles.
Yes. Okay, Brother Joe Ibrahim.
This kind of popped into my head while I was sitting here.
Go ahead and take the mic for this, because otherwise I'll have to repeat it all.
So I was thinking about this and it just popped into my head. And it's not because it's something revolutionary or whatever. It's very simple and I'm sure very well known. But I think the way that, if you look at the Old Testament and Joseph, the way that God used the actions of Joseph's brothers to save Egypt is the same way that God used the action of the Jews in their rejection of Christ to save the rest of the world.
Yes, that's a thought that ought to get developed further, but
Well,
if
there's a
people
whole
think
lot
about
of it
that.
too, and then the way
Yeah.
they rejected Joseph out of jealousy and betrayed him. He's a type of Christ, but
Yeah, and this
yeah.
would be, we know Joseph is the type of Christ, but especially in this way, his rejection, but it would end up being the salvation, yeah.
yeah, it saved his brothers, his father, their family, and Egypt as well in the process, which is a picture of the world as well. So
Yeah. Okay. If you look at B, the restoration of the throne of David, there's nothing about this that would be the restoration of the throne. The restoration of the throne of David was something that the Jews expected, but it's going to come after the inclusion of the Gentiles. It was supposed to come before the inclusion of the Gentiles. That's the way it was supposed to be. But because of the way things happened, because of the Jews' rejection of their king, it was not going to stop God's plan. It would only delay their participation in his kingdom. It would not delay the participation of us Gentiles. And so the crumbs from the table are a token of what was to come in the outreach to the Gentiles after the resurrection that would happen. Okay. And this is an important theme because you'll see this all through the Gospels. You don't really see Jesus going after the Gentiles. You don't see him in his world mission. The idea of world mission doesn't come, is not even initiated until the end of the Gospels in the Great Commission, and when you see after the resurrection at the Feast of Pentecost, where Jesus is telling them to go out to the uttermost parts of the earth. So you could see the Gospels are only for Christ fulfilling that sense of mission at that time. Now, that doesn't mean you're in some transition period between Old Testament and New Testament. No, the Bible clearly stated, as we saw on another occasion, that the law and the prophets were until John, or John the Baptist. So Jesus is like at the beginning of presenting himself as king to continue fulfilling the mission, and that's all the age of grace.